Alright, so I don't usually post stuff like this, but I've been sitting on it for a while, and the memory of it still stirs up something heavy in me. People always talk about Heath Ledger as the Joker, the legend, the myth, the guy who gave that once-in-a-lifetime performance. But to me, Heath's story is way more complicated. It's not just about fame or Hollywood. It's about the way life can twist on you, the way betrayal can creep in from places you didn't expect, and how sometimes success isn't the shield people think it is. I was younger back then, and Heath felt almost like one of us. Raw, talented, kind of reckless, and chasing something bigger than himself. He wasn't the type to play safe. That was part of his magic. But it was also part of the trap. The first time I heard about him wasn't through movies, actually. It was through a friend who worked behind the scenes in film production. He told me about this Australian guy with messy blonde hair, barely sleeping, always scribbling in journals, and throwing himself into roles like his whole life depended on it. Everyone thought, this guy's going to change the game. But what I didn't know at the time was that this same energy, the intensity, the obsession, was also eating him alive. At first, I felt this kind of admiration. Like, damn, here's a guy doing what most of us only dream about, going all in. But there was also this unsettling undercurrent. How long can someone live like that without breaking apart? And, well, as I'd later learn, not very long. Backhand index pointing right, that's where the story really starts for me. At the crossroads of admiration and unease, watching someone I respected from afar begin a journey that none of us expected would end the way it did. The first real, wow, moment came when 10 Things I Hate About You dropped. I'll be honest, I wasn't even into teen rom-coms at the time, but Heath stole the damn screen. That swagger, the accent, the way he turned a goofy high school role into something magnetic. Everyone I knew suddenly had his poster on their wall, and I remember thinking, this dude's gonna blow past teen heartthrob status. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Hollywood didn't actually want him at first. Studios were skeptical. They thought he was too raw, too foreign, or just another pretty boy. And Heath? He took that as fuel. Instead of leaning into the safe roles, he started turning down scripts left and right. People in the industry thought he was nuts. Who says no when you're trying to climb the ladder? But Heath was stubborn. He didn't just want fame, he wanted art. That's when the betrayal part began to creep in. I didn't know it yet, but Heath was constantly fighting against the machine that tried to pigeonhole him. Managers, producers, even some so-called friends. Everyone wanted a piece of him, but nobody really cared about him. And man, hearing about that messed me up more than I thought it would. Because isn't that the dream? To make it? But here was someone making it, and it was already starting to feel like a trap. I remember sitting there, thinking, if success feels this lonely, what hope is there for the rest of us? After the teen idol phase, Heath could have coasted. Easy money, easy fame. But he went the opposite direction. He threw himself into roles that weren't safe. That's when Brokeback Mountain happened. And let me tell you, that was a shockwave. For 2005, Two Cowboys in Love wasn't just a movie. It was a cultural earthquake. People were divided. Some praised it as groundbreaking, others mocked it. And Heath? He lived that role. Quiet, restrained, heartbreaking. He didn't just play Ennis Delmar. He became him. But here's where the betrayal part cut deep. Hollywood started whispering behind his back. Certain producers warned him he might ruin his career by doing it. Old friends back home joked about him selling out. Even some fans dropped off because they couldn't handle it. Can you imagine? Pouring your soul into something that important, and people treat it like a mistake? When I heard all that, I felt this weird mix of pride and anger. Pride because Heath stood tall and didn't flinch. Anger because the very people who were supposed to support him, the industry, his circle, were the ones undermining him. It hit me personally because I'd been in situations, not on that scale, obviously, where people doubted me the second I stepped outside their box for me. And watching Heath push forward despite all that, it was inspiring, but also a little haunting. Like he was running on a track where the finish line was always moving further away. Then came the dark night. And honestly, this is where everything flipped. People thought Heath was wrong for the Joker. I still remember the outrage online. Fans were furious. He's too pretty. He's just a rom-com guy. Some even compared it to when Keaton was cast as Batman, like it was a joke. But Heath? He didn't just brush it off. He went all in. And by all in, I mean he disappeared into it. He locked himself in an apartment for weeks. Barely slept. Filled notebooks with the Joker's twisted thoughts. Practiced that eerie laugh until it felt like it came from somewhere inhuman. Friends would visit and leave unsettled, saying, "That wasn't Heath talking." Here's where the emotional punch hit me. It sounded thrilling at first, an artist losing himself in the role. But the more I heard, the more it started to feel like watching someone walk willingly into quicksand. He couldn't climb out even if he wanted to. And here's the part that stung. The studio didn't care about his health. They cared about the performance. Every late night, every pill he took to sleep, every coffee to wake up, they looked the other way, as long as the footage was gold. That betrayal, man, it cut me. Because he gave them everything, and what he got back wasn't protection, it was silence. When the first trailer dropped, I felt goosebumps. I also felt dread, because deep down, it seemed like the role was swallowing him whole. While Heath was pouring himself into the Joker, his personal life was crumbling. That's the part people don't like to talk about, but it matters. He had just become a dad. His daughter, Matilda, was everything to him. Friends said she was the only thing that could pull him out of his darkness, even for a little while. But the pressure of fame, the long shoots, and his obsessive way of working, it was brutal on his relationship with Michelle Williams. They started as this picture-perfect couple, red carpets, big smiles, young family vibes. But behind closed doors, it wasn't like that. Michelle wanted stability, someone present. Heath, he was drifting further into the chaos. The insomnia, the roles, the constant pressure to keep proving himself. When the breakup happened, it shook me more than I expected. Not because celebrity couples splitting is rare, it happens all the time, but because Heath genuinely looked shattered by it. It wasn't like, oh well, moving on. No, it gutted him. He missed his daughter constantly. He'd talk about her to friends with this ache in his voice, like he knew he was failing at the one role that actually mattered. And here's where betrayal cut in again, but this time from life itself. The guy had fought against Hollywood's labels, pushed himself into legendary performances, and what did he get? The love of his life walking away, and his kid growing up mostly without him around. For me, it was a reality check. Like, what's the point of chasing everything if you end up losing the only things that keep you human? This is where it starts getting heavy. Heath's health was breaking down right in front of people's eyes. The insomnia was the worst of it. He'd say things like, "My mind just won't stop." Imagine finishing a grueling day on set, body exhausted, but your brain is still racing like a freight train. Night after night, no real rest. He tried everything, warm milk, reading, late-night walks, but nothing worked. So, like a lot of people under pressure, he turned to pills. First, just to sleep. Then, to manage the anxiety. Then, to push through the exhaustion when he had to be up early. And here's the brutal part. Doctors kept prescribing. Different meds from different people, all stacking up. It wasn't one big mistake. It was 1,000 little ones, ignored. I remember when I first read about that, I felt angry. Like, how many people had to see him struggling before someone stepped in? His friends said they'd find him passed out on the couch, scripts scattered on the floor, music still playing. But Hollywood's machine doesn't stop for anyone. The Joker needed finishing. The movie needed to be perfect. And Heath? He was just another cog they couldn't afford to lose. Until they did. What hit me hardest was the loneliness of it. All the fame, all the cameras, and yet he was swallowing pills alone, chasing a few hours of peace. That betrayal, by the system, by the people who should have cared, cut deeper than any Hollywood gossip. The final months of Heath's life felt like a storm building in slow motion. On the outside, everything looked golden. He had just finished filming The Dark Knight. The hype was insane. People who doubted him before were now calling his Joker legendary, even before the movie dropped. Everyone wanted a piece of him. But inside, he was unraveling. He was in London, then New York, bouncing between shoots and promotion talks. He'd tell interviewers casually about sleeping only 2 hours a night, as if it was no big deal. But you could see it in his face, dark circles, a kind of jittery energy that wasn't just acting anymore. Friends said he'd laugh one moment, then spiral into silence the next. He tried to keep busy. He was looking into directing, sketching out new projects. He wanted control over his career, something beyond acting. But the truth is, he was burning out. His journals from that time, yeah, the ones about the Joker, were filled with disturbing notes. Ramblings, chaos, words that didn't feel like his. And here's the unexpected part. A few close people did notice. They begged him to slow down, to take a break. But Heath? He was stubborn. He said he'd rest after. After the press. After the movie. After the next project. Always after. That hit me hard. Because I've said that same lie to myself 100 times. I'll rest when it's done. But sometimes done never comes. Looking back, it felt like he was sprinting toward a wall, knowing it was there, but unable, or unwilling, to stop. January 22nd, 2008. That's the date burned into my head. I remember exactly where I was when the news broke, sitting in a crappy apartment, scrolling through early internet headlines, when the words jumped out. Heath Ledger found dead in New York apartment. At first, I didn't believe it. Celebrity death rumors were everywhere back then, and half of them turned out fake. But this one, it wasn't fake. It was everywhere, confirmed within minutes. My chest actually tightened like I'd lost someone I knew. The details started trickling in. His housekeeper found him. Prescription bottles nearby. He was just 28. 28. Younger than some people are when they finally graduate or figure out their first real job. And here was a guy who had reached the highest peak of Hollywood, gone in an instant. What broke me most was hearing that his masseuse and his assistant were the first people on the scene. Imagine that. His final moments weren't surrounded by family or close friends, but by near strangers just doing their jobs. That image haunted me. The media frenzy was disgusting. Paparazzi outside his apartment, tabloids making wild claims about overdoses, drugs, the dark side of the Joker. It was betrayal all over again. They used his death as entertainment. And the fact that he was gone so young, leaving behind his daughter, man, it just made it all feel cruel. I sat there staring at the screen, thinking, how does someone with the world at their feet end up alone like that? Shock doesn't even begin to cover it. The aftermath felt surreal, like the whole world had been sucker punched. Fans set up little shrines outside his apartment in New York. Flowers, candles, handwritten notes. People who never met him cried like they'd lost a brother. I remember scrolling through forums where total strangers were pouring their hearts out, saying his work had changed them, that his roles gave them courage to be themselves. His family flew in from Australia. His dad's statement gutted me. We, Heath's family, confirmed the very tragic, untimely, and accidental passing of our dearly loved son, brother, and doting father of Matilda. The words doting father hit hardest. Because beyond all the Joker talk, all the awards, all the chaos, he was just a dad who wanted more time with his little girl. Michelle Williams, man, her statement broke everyone. She called Matilda the spitting image of Heath and said she'd carry his spirit through her. You could feel the grief in every word. Imagine raising your child, knowing the world will never let her forget her father, but also never let her escape his shadow. That's a kind of double-edged legacy. Meanwhile, the media wouldn't stop. Rumors about suicide, about method acting being to blame, about him spiraling into darkness because of the Joker role. Some of it was half true, some of it complete garbage. But either way, it felt like they were dissecting him instead of mourning him. That betrayal, turning his pain into profit, made me sick. And yet, through all the noise, one truth stood out. Heath Ledger wasn't just a star who died young. He was a human being who left behind a hole too big to fill. I remember sitting quietly that night, thinking, if the world can feel this heavy about losing him, what must his little girl feel? When The Dark Knight finally dropped in July 2008, it didn't feel like just another movie release. It felt like a cultural event wrapped in grief. I remember lining up for a midnight screening. The theater was buzzing, but not in the usual way. People weren't just excited. They were reverent, like we were about to witness something sacred. When Heath's Joker appeared on screen for the first time, the entire theater went dead silent. No popcorn crunching, no whispering, just pure focus. And holy hell, he was terrifying. Not just scary, unsettling. Every twitch, every lick of his lips, every line delivered like he knew something the rest of us didn't. It didn't even feel like watching an actor. It felt like watching chaos personified. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, this is what it cost him. The applause at the end was different too. Usually, people cheer because the movie's good. But that night, it was for him. For Heath. A standing ovation in a dark room full of strangers who all felt the same knot in their throats. When the reviews poured in, they weren't just glowing. They were historic. Critics called it one of the greatest performances in film history. People admitted they were wrong for ever doubting him. And yet, it was bittersweet. Because Heath wasn't there to see it. He never got to take a bow. What gutted me most was knowing he gave everything to that role. And the world got to celebrate. But he never got the relief. That's when I started realizing the real betrayal wasn't just by Hollywood or the media. It was by the very dream he chased. And man, that realization stung. Then came the Oscars in 2009. Heath Ledger won Best Supporting Actor posthumously for The Joker. I remember watching it on TV, trying to keep my emotions in check. When they announced his name, the crowd erupted, but there was this weird hollowness to it. The standing ovation was for someone who wasn't there to hear it, to feel it, to take it in himself. I felt tears prick my eyes, not just because of the award, but because of what it symbolized, the ultimate mix of triumph and tragedy. His family accepted it on his behalf. Michelle Williams, Matilda's mom, walked on stage, holding back tears. Heath's dad gave a short speech, talking about his son's passion, his love for his craft, and his dedication to his family. Every word was soaked in loss. It hit me like a punch in the gut. The world could finally recognize Heath for the genius he was, but it was too late. The person who deserved it most wasn't alive to feel it. And that, more than the fame, the awards, the Joker, felt like the cruelest betrayal of all. I spent the rest of the night thinking about what it means to chase your dreams. Heath gave it everything, went all in, and left us masterpieces, but he paid the ultimate price. And I realized I'd been carrying a quiet fear of that same fate in my own life. Working too hard, giving too much, and forgetting the people and moments that truly matter. After his death, the world reacted in ways that were both beautiful and heartbreaking. Tributes poured in from fans, actors, directors, everyone. People shared stories of how Heath inspired them, not just as an actor, but as a human being who dared to push boundaries. Film schools held special classes analyzing his performances. Cosplayers dressed as the Joker not for Halloween, but as homage. Even years later, new actors would cite him as the reason they wanted to pursue their craft. But here's the twist. The legacy came with a shadow. Every time someone praised him, it reminded the world, and Matilda, of what was lost. Awards, statues, articles, even movies inspired by his style, all celebrated a man who wasn't there to witness it. And for those of us watching from the sidelines, it was a mix of awe and grief. We got to enjoy the art, but we were painfully aware of the human cost. It made me think a lot about the way the world treats its talented people. How easy it is to celebrate brilliance after it's gone, while ignoring warning signs when they're alive. The more I learned about his journals, his routines, the people he trusted, the more I realized that Heath's life was a lesson in both brilliance and vulnerability. And for me, personally, it hit close to home. Because I started asking myself, in chasing my own ambitions, am I paying attention to my health, my people, the moments that matter? Or am I just racing toward applause that might never come? Heath's story didn't just stay on the screen or in the news, it followed me everywhere. For months after his death, I kept replaying his life in my head. Every choice, every risk, every sleepless night. It forced me to reflect on my own path. I was chasing promotions at work, staying up late to finish projects, convincing myself that exhaustion was just part of the grind. But watching Heath's story unfold, seeing how someone could give everything to their passion and still lose themselves, it hit hard. I started asking myself tough questions. Was I prioritizing the right things? Was I leaning on people I trusted, or just pretending to be okay while everyone else assumed I was fine? Heath's journey made me realize that ambition without balance can be dangerous. The betrayal isn't always from others. It can come from within, from ignoring your own limits. So I made a decision. I started slowing down. Small things first: better sleep, honest conversations with friends, spending more time with family. At work, I learned to delegate instead of grinding until I burned out. And emotionally, I let myself feel anger, sadness, guilt, without pushing it down. Heath's story was brutal, but it was also a guidepost. Don't let obsession destroy the life you actually live. It wasn't immediate. Change never is. But the moment I decided to take it seriously, I felt the weight lift slightly. Like I was honoring Heath by learning from what he couldn't escape. Looking back now, Heath's life feels like both a warning and an inspiration. The warning is obvious. Push too hard, ignore your health, and the world can take everything from you in an instant. Fame, talent, even love, none of it protects you from the consequences of neglecting yourself. Watching Heath's story made me realize that no role, no project, no accolade is worth losing your mental or physical well-being over. But the inspiration is there too. Heath never compromised on his vision. He threw himself into his art with courage and honesty, refusing to be boxed in or judged by what others expected. That kind of dedication, raw, fearless, and unapologetic, is rare. And even in tragedy, it left the world with something unforgettable. His work reminds me that real art comes from truth, from vulnerability, from risking everything to make something meaningful. For me, it reshaped how I approach life. I became more intentional about my work, my relationships, my passions. I learned to value balance as much as ambition and authenticity as much as success. Heath's story taught me that even in loss, there's clarity, and even in betrayal, there's a lesson. Here's the truth I've carried with me since Heath's death. Life is fragile, and the cost of chasing greatness can be higher than we imagine. Watching him push himself to the edge and seeing the consequences taught me something I'll never forget. If there's one piece of advice I'd give anyone, whether you're chasing a dream, hustling at work, or pouring yourself into art, it's this. Take care of yourself along the way. Sleep, eat, breathe. Spend time with the people who matter. Ask for help when you need it. Passion is powerful, but unchecked obsession can be deadly. And another thing, don't let the world's expectations dictate your worth. Heath didn't, and that's why his work endures. But he also paid the ultimate price for it, and that part of the story is often forgotten. Remember that balance isn't weakness, it's survival. For me personally, Heath's story reshaped how I live. I slowed down. I set boundaries. I chose projects and relationships that nourished me instead of drained me. And when life throws betrayal, exhaustion, or heartbreak your way, remember that how you respond, how you honor your own limits, matters more than what anyone else says. In the end, Heath Ledger left the world masterpieces and a cautionary tale. And for those of us still here, all we can do is learn from both. Live fully, take risks, but never forget to take care of the person living the life you're building.